The FIFA video game franchise has been running for almost 30 years. It's fair to say that, whatever you think of the game nowadays, EA have made it the best football game to date, and also one of the most profitable video game series ever. In this video I will show you some of the craziest facts about the video game FIFA, with some of them even dating back to the very first FIFA in 1993. So we all know the more recent cover stars on each FIFA game, with the likes of Lionel Messi, Kylian Mbappé, Eden Hazard and Cristiano Ronaldo being just a few examples. But the actual first cover star on any FIFA game is David Platt, who was on the cover of the FIFA International Soccer game, which was released in 1993. David Platt was a youth player for Manchester City before moving to Italy and joining Juventus and Sampdoria. He then moved back to England to play for Arsenal, where he won a league and cup double in 1998. He retired in 2001. The other player on the cover is RaatjeFC, who played for many clubs in his 20-year career, such as Marseille, Saint-Etienne, Bastia and Birmingham City. But if we are looking at the player who has been on the most covers of a FIFA edition, it's not someone like Ronaldinho, Cristiano Ronaldo or even Lionel Messi. It's actually Wayne Rooney, who was on the cover of FIFA 06 all the way to FIFA 12. 7 covers in total. Ronaldinho is second on the list with 5 appearances. He was on the cover of FIFA 04, FIFA 06, FIFA 07, FIFA 08 and FIFA 09. Messi comes in third with 4 appearances, being on the cover from FIFA 13 till FIFA 16. A fun fact about one of the more early developments of the game was that EA actually wanted to name the game EA Soccer at first. It was renamed to FIFA International Soccer after EA thought the initial name would not appeal to European markets. But it also didn't want to take away the interest in its home market in America. With a lot of rumors saying that FIFA won't be called FIFA for much longer due to conflicts between EA and FIFA, the International Football Federation of course, there might be a small chance that the game could be called EA Soccer very soon, or at least something along those lines. Although I doubt they will use the word soccer, as the word football is more known across the globe nowadays. It's quite interesting if you look back to the start of the game, where the actual inspiration for EA to develop a football game was the 1994 World Cup in Atlanta. That's also why the game had the word soccer in its name at first, as mainly people in America used that word. But funnily enough, they didn't even have the MLS in the game until 2000, because they actually only have the country's second division, the USA League, in the game before that. There were only international countries in the game at first, with no actual clubs. There were 78 national teams with no real player names, and there was only one stadium you could play in. A few small features that you could set up for each match were that you could disable the offside rule, which can make a match against your friends a lot more fun. You could also do a coin toss before a match, which you can't even do in current FIFA. If you win the coin toss, you could also choose which side to play on, or if you want to take the first kickoff. And of course there were a lot more countries to play with than in the current FIFA. Yes, they didn't have the real player names, but still though, there could also be an option in the newest FIFA editions, I feel like. There's actually only one FIFA game that has entered the top 50 best-selling video games list of all time. FIFA 18 managed to get 24 million copies sold and ranks in 39th place. At first you might be wondering where the other FIFA editions have gone, but you have to remember that FIFA releases yearly, and so won't beat games that just have a one-time release, or a game that releases every few years. A few examples are Minecraft, Wii Sports, Call of Duty, GTA, Pokemon and many more. And just a quick note here that's still quite fake if FIFA 18 is actually the most sold FIFA video game ever, as there are also reports that FIFA 21 has sold over 31 million copies, which would put FIFA in 17th place of most sold video games of all time. If we purely look at the most sold FIFA versions and not the most sold video games ever, then I have a top 10 list for you, which I found on GameRant.com, so check out their link in the description. At number 10 we have FIFA 10. The reason it sold so well was that it replaced the 8 direction control of players you had in earlier FIFA versions, which meant you could run in just a few directions to a full 360-degree movement. It also added player transfers and fixtures and results from around the world to the game. At number 9 we have FIFA 12. This version also sold more than 10 million copies, and it introduced tactical defending and made the gameplay a lot more balanced. FIFA 16 is ranked at number 8 as it sold 11 million copies. The main thing that got added were the introduction of female national teams. FIFA 17 sold 13 million copies and is ranked at number 7. This was the first FIFA that had the Frostbite engine to improve the gameplay, and of course also had the first part of The Journey, which was a single player story mode with Alex Hunter, as some of you might remember. At number 6 we have FIFA 14, which sold 14 million copies. It was the first FIFA game to be released on a PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, which were brand new consoles at the time of course. FIFA 15 is in at number 5 and also sold 14 million copies. This was the last FIFA title to release on Nintendo Wii and handheld consoles, which obviously meant people couldn't buy a new version of the game on their respective consoles after. At number 4 we have FIFA 13, which sold over 14.5 million copies. This FIFA introduced a new first touch control and attacking intelligence features, which made a noticeable difference to earlier FIFAs. This was also the first FIFA that had Messi on the cover. FIFA 11 sold 60 million copies and is ranked number 3. The main reason for this is the introduction of career mode. At number 2 we have FIFA 19, which sold over 20 million copies. This FIFA had the final part of the journey, with a lot of players wanting to know how the story ends and so buying the game. This was also the first FIFA game to have the rights for the UEFA Champions League, Europa League and Super Cup competitions. And as I mentioned in a previous fact, FIFA 18 is number 1 and sold over 26.4 million copies. The main reason for this? The introduction of icons in the Ultimate Team, which was the main selling point of the game. Of course, it also had the second part of the journey. And as I just mentioned in the previous fact as well, it could still be good to believe that FIFA 21 was the most sold FIFA game ever, selling over 31 million copies. I have checked a couple of news articles and some say FIFA 18 and some say FIFA 21. Only EA really know the answer. Anyway, let's just move on to the next fact. The next fact is that EA actually works on each FIFA version a good few years in advance. This means that big features are developed years before there's even the suitable technology to create it. The same was with Ultimate Team, which was thought of years before it came out. EA just didn't know how to incorporate it smoothly. Same with goalkeeper animations, which wasn't possible to be programmed on a PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 console generation, and so forced EA to wait programming this. Most of you know how EA captures the faces of players to get a scanned Gameface in the game. They photograph and film them from every angle, which is part of the head scanning process. Nigel Nunn was the man who had to capture the players of the Premier League. Players also have to do different facial expressions, which makes it more realistic when players talk or when there are certain actions that happen on the pitch. Nunn had to ask each player to do things like puff out their cheeks, show an angry face and say certain phrases, which you obviously can't hear during the game. For players who are from another country and don't speak or understand English, this can be a very hard task. During the development of FIFA 15, one of those players was Victor Valdes, who played for Manchester United at the time. Struggling with many of the English words, Valdes was unable to give Nunn what he wanted. He therefore is hardly ever seen moving his lips in the game, aside from a few basic words. As we saw earlier in this video, Thierry Henry was on the cover of FIFA 2004. He was displayed as one of the top stars who clearly preferred FIFA to PES. Well, later on it turned out that that wasn't the truth, as Henry later said that he is a bigger fan of Konami's game than EA's. This happened when Henry signed a deal with Konami to feature on the cover of Pro Evolution Soccer 4 in 2004. During a press announcement to show his preference to PES, Henry said that he had been playing the football games for around a decade and thought PES was a more accurate representation of real-life football. One of EA's developers, Chip Lang, found that the comments were hard to take. After this incident, it would have been easy for FIFA to give up and let PES win the football-related video game war, but EA only became more motivated by what Henry said. And this was all happening during the earlier years of both games. We almost can't remember a time in FIFA history where we don't use skill moves whilst playing a match. Well, the person who actually pitched the skill moves feature to EA was a former Jamaican international, Aaron McHardy. He was working as a playtester for FIFA games, and the idea of adding skill moves to the game even made McHardy part of the development team for FIFA 08. He was a motion capture star in FIFA 07 and eventually left real-life football behind to work on a virtual pitch. Nowadays he still works at EA as an executive producer. Going back to the first FIFA title, it wasn't particularly one that EA thought would be a big success. When it was released at the end of 1993, it shocked everyone that it became one of the best-selling games of the entire year, even outselling the official FIFA World Cup 1994 game, which was produced by US Gold. Whilst the game was being developed, it became clear to the small team that was working on the game that the top-level management were considering cancelling the development of the game. In fact, FIFA International Soccer was considered for cancellation multiple times, but somehow escaped each time. One of the main reasons was that developers decided to basically hide from the management in the hope that they would forget about it. Can you imagine that FIFA International Soccer was cancelled and probably wouldn't even be around today in its current form? We all like to play with our favorite clubs in modern FIFA versions and to play in our favorite leagues. As football clubs and leagues were added to the game from FIFA 95 onwards, there have been a few leagues that used to be in FIFA, which aren't in FIFA anymore. The first being the second division of the United States, which I mentioned earlier in this video. In FIFA 19.5, the game didn't have the license to have the first division, but they did have the license for the A-League, the second tier. It would take until the 2000 edition before FIFA had the real clubs and players from the Major League Soccer, instead of using fake teams and players. In FIFA 95, the Brazilian league only contained teams from the Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro states, with the exception of Internacional. It would not be until FIFA 07 that the official first division of Brazil was in the game. A year later, EA added a few new leagues such as the Scottish and Swedish League, which of course are still in the game. But they also added the Malaysian first division, the Super League Malaysia. This league would stay in the game for the next 2 editions as well, before being removed. FIFA 2000 had the inclusion of Port Vale, who were in the second English division at the time and who got added to the rest of the world section, as there were no low leagues in the game till FIFA 2004. Port Vale got added as it was Robbie Williams' favourite team. Robbie Williams made the title song for this FIFA, called It's Only Us, and so Port Vale got added. Of course, there have also been leagues that were removed and some of them also got added back later on. A few examples are the Portuguese League and the Turkish Super League. The Greek, Russian, Czech and Brazilian League have been removed from an earlier FIFA version and haven't returned to the game yet, although some teams from each league have been added as a standalone add-on to the game and can be found in the rest of the world section. We all know most of the FIFA soundtracks from over the past decade, and I'm sure everyone has a few FIFA songs they will just never get tired of listening to. Well, the first licensed soundtrack was in FIFA 98, with a very popular song used as the intro track for the game. It is Song 2 by Blur. FIFA 98 didn't have many songs, 7 in total. Apart from Song 2, it included 4 songs from the Crystal Method, 1 from the Electric Skies Church and 1 from Chumba Wamba. FIFA 99 had just 6 songs, with Rockefeller Skank by Norman Cook being the main one. FIFA 2000 had 8 songs, FIFA 2001 had 6 songs, FIFA 2002 more than doubled that with 13 songs, FIFA 2003 had 14 songs, and since FIFA 2004 the list became a lot bigger with at least 30 songs. Now there are many songs that have been in the FIFA series over the years, but some big artists that you most likely have heard about used to have a song in a previous FIFA version. Let me list a few who you might not know who did have a song in FIFA. Someone who I just named is Robbie Williams, of course, who had a song called It's Only Us in FIFA 2000. Chesto had a song called Flight 643 in FIFA 2002. Avril Lavigne had a song called Complicated in FIFA 2003. Kings of Leon were in the FIFA 2004 soundtrack with Red Morning Light. Oasis had a song called Lila in FIFA 06. Kanan was also in the FIFA 06 soundtrack with Subex. Muse was in the FIFA 07 soundtrack with Supermassive Black Hole. The Script was in the FIFA 09 soundtrack with The End Where I Begin. Major Lazer was in the FIFA 10 soundtrack with Hold the Line. And the last one in this list is Linkin Park, who had their song Blackout in FIFA 11. So these were 15 facts you might not have known about FIFA. Let me know in the comments which one you found the most interesting and if you want to see another video similar to this. If you could like this video and subscribe to my channel to help me get to 10,000 subscribers, then I would massively appreciate that. And I will see you at the next video.